And now to tell us what the international desk has for us this coming week, we speak to SABC News Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Sherwin, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us. I believe that the Arizona-based memorial service for Charlie Kirk is underway, taking place, and President Donald Trump is expected to be a part of that proceeding.
President of the United States, Vice President J.D. Vance, and other dignitaries, one imagines, from the highest echelons of the U.S. government, from the Republican Party. This is very much likely, Oliver, to be a MAGA-type rally event. It's going to be held in a big stadium in a city called Glendale, Arizona. This stadium seats about 65,000 people, and this will be a memorial service to the very young Charlie Kirk that was assassinated on September 10th. By a suspect that is now in custody, a Tyler Robertson, 22-year-old, that is, of course, charged with a variety of felony charges, including aggravated murder, a felony discharge of a firearm, causing serious bodily harm, obstruction of justice, with witness tampering. But today's memorial won't be focused on him. It'll be focused on a tribute to Charlie Kirk, who has been dubbed the youth whisperer in the United States because of his impact in reaching out in terms of the Republican Party to the young people of this country and catalyzing the youth vote that really did surge in terms of Donald Trump's victory against Kamala Harris in the last general election. So the president expected really very much to lead proceedings there, and one imagines that he will hold court as he does at his rallies in lieu of that election last year. You probably see visuals to that effect, but very much a focus on Charlie Kirk and his send-off later today.
Yeah. And this coming week is perhaps the most important week on the global diplomacy calendar, with, of course, the United Nations General Assembly taking place this week, but more so accentuatedly important for South Africa, given that two very important things are happening. An ongoing negotiations, tariff negotiation between South Africa and the United States is taking place, and that, of course, will continue to make headlines on the margins of UNGA, as well as, of course, President Ramaphosa potentially engaging President Trump on the margins there of UNGA. What are you specifically going to be looking out for this week?
Well, essentially, Oliver, the president's diary becomes our diary, because I'll essentially be his tail over the next day, as he left South Africa at around 8:30 a.m. your time this morning. He expected to land at JFK at around 9 p.m. local time, about 3 a.m. in the morning tomorrow for you. And his program is packed. So let me just give you a quick rundown of what we're expecting him to be focused on, and that essentially will be my focus and our focus here on SABC News. On Monday, he is due to participate in the all-important two-state solution conference. Now, as you know, South Africa already recognizes a Palestinian state, but a number of Western countries, we expect the United Kingdom to announce that they'll formally recognize today. France has been leading the way in terms of that. Canada has indicated, many other Western countries and others are indicating that they will formally recognize a Palestinian state at that two-state solution conference. So President Ramaphosa very much at the forefront of engagements around the world in terms of arresting the situation that is evolving in Gaza, particularly at the International Court of Justice. So he will be attending that. And then, of course, in the evening on Monday, he will be attending an African heads of state dinner and champagne toast, we understand. On Tuesday, it's the general debate. This is when he will present the country statement to the General Assembly. He will also be engaging in a discussion, we understand, at the Council on Foreign Relations think tank here in New York. This is a forward-thinking, engaging forum that really advises on U.S. foreign policy and foreign policy around the world. So he'll be talking there. And one imagines that the contestation that is the relationship today between Pretoria and Washington will be a central focus of that discussion. And, of course, his role as G20 chairman president right now. In the evening on Tuesday, President Donald Trump will be hosting a reception, as he does, as the U.S. president does annually at the UN General Assembly. As the host country, they host a reception for all the heads of delegation. On Wednesday, there's a biennial summit for a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient economy, a key peg of the work that is currently being done by the G20. It'll be chaired by Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General. He'll be participating in that. The president of South Africa. Then South Africa chairs, Oliver, something called the Global Leaders Network on Women, Children's and Adolescent Health. President Ramaphosa participated in an event similar to one he's expected to participate on Wednesday this year. He participated in something similar last year, so that now becomes an annual engagement for the president when he's in New York. There's also a special event on climate action, then followed by bilateral engagements with US companies. So they'll be stepping away on Wednesday evening here to engage with business, right? And we understand there's also going to be a trade and investment conference hosted by the US Chamber of Commerce. You know, Park Style, the Minister of Trade, Competition, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Style, has been in Washington, D.C., has been engaging with the U.S. Trade Representative, Jamison Greer. He is now in New York, and we are going to be speaking to Park Style later today. We understand that he's available around 9:30 p.m. South African time. We hope to bring that to you live on the late edition to really understand how those trade talks have moved forward. Where are we in this engagement, right? In the context, of course, Oliver, of the African Growth and Opportunity Act expiring at the end of September. September 30th is the very last day that AGOA becomes a functional free trade agreement between the United States and Sub-Saharan Africa. And what are the implications of that for South Africa moving forward? So very, very important discussion coming up with Park Style later today. And then on Thursday, the last event with the president will be South Africa chairing a G20 foreign ministers meeting, kind of like infusing some momentum ahead of the Leaders Summit in November in South Africa. So that will be his last engagement. He'll then speak to the media before he leaves. We hope to be among them. And then we'll send him back to you in South Africa. Oliver.
Well, the two-state solution summit that will be taking place is an important summit, and South Africa will no doubt participate in it. But the controversy around it is that certain Palestinian leaders have not been granted visas to attend UNGA this year by Donald Trump. How much of that has been resolved, and how much of that will fill the air on Tuesday?
Yeah, there was also some concern that the Brazilians would not be given visas, given the tense relationship between President Lula and President Trump as it relates to the conviction now of former President Jair Bolsonaro. But we also understand that has largely been resolved. President Lula will be here in person. But to your point, right, the visas have not been granted to the Palestinian delegation. And what the General Assembly did on Friday was vote a special resolution which passed that will allow, in the context of not being able to travel, will allow President Abbas and his delegation to participate in the meetings of the General Assembly or the UN General Assembly this week via virtual teleconference. They can do pre-recorded statements, so there will be participation, but they will not be in the room. And that really does speak to the fraught relationship currently between the United States and the Palestinian Authority, and the extent to which Washington is going here to really aid and abet, if you will, to use a term familiar with, bad behavior in a sense, really supporting Israel in this quest, really, in terms of seeking to isolate Abbas. But that, of course, is not going to work here because the General Assembly has voted that he can participate virtually. But, of course, Israel and the United States are not very keen on this conference. They've criticized it. They will not be supporting it. But the vast majority of countries will be in that room.
Yeah. And just lastly, while there isn't a specific, President Ramaphosa will be attending the reception hosted by Donald Trump, but there's nothing specific on the diary about the two leaders very specifically having a one-on-one and meeting and speaking. You've been in the cadence and choreography of these sorts of events quite a bit. What are the prospects of a pull-away conversation in a little breakaway room for about 10, 20 minutes to just get a temperature check-in on each other to make sure that those ongoing trade negotiations run smooth? But also, President Ramaphosa seems to hope to try and convince Donald Trump to attend the G20 summit, despite the fact that, the State Department had announced that J.D. Vance will be representing the U.S. delegation in November in South Africa. Is that at all possible, that little breakaway?
Yeah, your optimism that Donald Trump will be coming to the G20 is admirable, Oliver, I'll tell you that. I asked Minister Lamola in that interview that you played at the top there on Friday whether this was a settled matter, right? Are they still trying to get Donald Trump to come to South Africa? And he said, as far as they're concerned, they are settled that he's not coming, and they're very happy that J.D. Vance will be there to take over the gavel, as it will, because South Africa, of course, is to hand over the presidency of the G20 to the United States, that will then host their summit in Doral in Florida, a property of the President of the United States. But yes, those pullaways are always possible. The problem with those pullaways is that it's not on the books. It'll have to happen in the room. It can, at the spur of the moment. Remember, Ramaphosa is not just the only head of state in that room. Everybody's there, and everybody wants to pull away with the president because not everybody gets a bilateral with Donald Trump at the UNGA. So that is always a possibility, but it's never assured. So I would minimize our expectations as to whether that would happen. But if it does happen, we'll let you know.
Yeah, Sherwin, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Busy week ahead of you. Hope you get some good sleep in between all of that.